Okay, if you can hear and see me, just give me a wave and a quick smile. Okay, excellent. So nice to see everyone. So welcome to the Ozone Global Lecture Series. This is going to be the first one of many lecture series that we're going to be doing this semester. Next month, we're going to be doing one with Brent Jones, Professor Jones, and he is going to be talking about peace studies. And then the month afterwards, Haruka Sensei is going to be talking to you guys about health and happiness and living a successful life. So please stay tuned for those lecture series as well. Now, in the chat window, I'm going to send everyone a handout. If you would like to take notes during the presentation, or you want links to some of the websites that I talk about, you can find it on this PDF that I'm sending you now. Oh, it's quite a big PDF, so it's going to take a minute in the chat window. And at any time you guys want, please write your questions in the chat window, or at the end, we will have an open session and we can ask lots of questions. So if there's something that you don't understand or something that you want to learn more about, please ask those questions, write down your questions, and at the end, we will have some time. Okay? Give me a thumbs up, a digital thumbs up if you understand, or show me your thumb. Beautiful. Look at all those digital thumbs up. Looks fantastic. All right. That is great. Okay, let's get started. So just one moment here. Let me just get my PowerPoint ready. Okay. I think, can everybody see the PowerPoint? Just give me a thumbs up if you can see the PowerPoint. Fantastic. Okay, great. Okay, let's get started. So today we're going to talk about how you can be part of the climate solution. So today we're going to be breaking it down and talking about what is climate change. We're going to look at the first thing that you can do about climate change, the second thing, and the last thing, which is the most important. My suggestion, make sure you guys are taking some notes as we go through. So let's talk about climate change. What is climate change and what does it mean for you and your future? So as you guys may or may not know, this picture here is one of the first images of Earth that was taken by NASA in 1972. And if you look at it, this was one of the first pictures that we saw the entire Earth all together. Now, one of the things that this picture shows really well is when we look up in the sky looks like it is very, very big, but in fact, it is actually very, very thin. So if you look on the edges of the Earth, you'll notice that it looks like a little tiny line, and that is our atmosphere. So everything, all the pollution from our cars and our factories goes into that little tiny thin line of atmosphere. It looks like it's big when we look in the sky, but in fact, it is very, very small. So this is how global warming works. We have radiation that comes from the sun, and this is in light waves, and it passes through our atmosphere. So you see that fuzzy blue line around the Earth? That is our atmosphere. This actually looks really thick, but our atmosphere, in fact, is razor, razor thin. It's very, very thin. So most of this energy is absorbed on the Earth, and it warms the Earth. So this is why we can have life on Earth, because our atmosphere helps, the sun warms the Earth, and this energy, some of it is radiated back down to Earth and is trapped between the Earth and the atmosphere. And the rest of it goes back out into space. So there's just enough radiation to keep the Earth warm and habitable so that we can all live comfortably on the planet. Now, this is the problem, is that atmosphere is starting to get thicker and thicker and thicker with carbon dioxide, right? Which is a greenhouse gas. So as this atmosphere gets thicker and thicker and thicker, more of that heat is trapped. So if you guys think about it, at nighttime, right, when it is a little bit cold out and you start feeling cold in bed, you go and grab another blanket to put on top. It helps to keep the warmth in. Essentially, what we're doing by putting all of this carbon into the atmosphere is we are putting extra blankets on the Earth. So more heat is trapped next to the Earth. This is why we call it global warming, because more heat is trapped and it increases the average temperature of the climate. So currently, we are putting about 152 million tons of warming pollution into that little tiny thin atmosphere. So we kind of treat our atmosphere, that little tiny thin slice of atmosphere, as a sewer. Everyone puts all their pollution into it, and we all share that air that we breathe. So this is a huge, huge problem. Okay, let's talk about where this pollution comes from, or what are the major sources of this pollution. So here, oops, sorry, that cloud, the CO2 cloud is kind of covering up the words, but it says the biggest sources of greenhouse gases. So if we look around here, we can see, for example, that coal plants, right? So we burn coal, which is a rock from the ground, to create energy. This creates a lot of greenhouse gases. Fertilization creates a lot. Flying on airplanes creates a lot. And then, of course, all the energy that we get for our houses, for our lights, for running our computer systems, this comes mostly, especially here in Japan, from burning of oil and gas or coal. So the energy that we use in Japan mostly comes from these sources, and those gases go into the atmosphere. The more greenhouse gases, the thicker that atmosphere becomes, and the more heat is trapped on Earth. Now, if you look at this chart that's here, you will see, going back to 1880, so this is over 100 years ago, and you will see the change in what we call global surface temperature. Global surface temperature is the average temperature everywhere on Earth. So what scientists do is they take the temperature in Kobe and the temperature in Tokyo and the temperature in Helsinki and in Manila and in Vancouver. They take all of the temperatures together and they make an average temperature. That is how we can know the global surface or the climate average. And the blue lines, you guys can see, it is below average in the 1880s to the 1930s. But then we start seeing these little tiny peaks of red. The reason we start seeing those around the 1940s is because we started using oil and gas to run our cars, to produce energy. And now, if you look between 2000 and 2020, we are way above the average temperature. So many of you might have heard of 1.5 degrees Celsius. This is a common thing that people in the United Nations talk about all the time. We have to keep the global surface temperature below 1.5. And already, as you can see, we are already at 1 degree and we are moving forward still. So this is really important. We need to stop producing so many greenhouse gases. So what are the effects of this global warming? Today, I'm going to talk about a couple of effects that happen. So here we can see this is in Australia. And on January 5th, 2020, this city of Canberra set a new record, 44 degrees Celsius. They've never seen 44 degrees Celsius before. That is crazy, crazy hot. India, which is a developing country, and it has the second largest population in the world. In northern India, in a place called Amritsar, they reached 50 degrees Celsius. Can you imagine 50 degrees Celsius? Now, one of the things about India is they have the world's second largest population. There's lots and lots of people there, and it is a developing country. So people don't have, a lot of people can't afford getting air conditioners. So this is really, really big problem. Another example is in Pakistan. So on June 2nd, 2019, they reached 50 degrees Celsius. And again, Pakistan is another very populated country, and it is a developing country. So there are many poor people who cannot afford air conditioning. So this is a huge health problem for many, many people around the world. Now, this doesn't just affect developing countries, but it also affects a lot of developed countries. So when we think about Europe, Europe is a richer part of the world. And 2019 was the hottest year on record. This means they broke all-time highs in terms of temperature records, which is really, really bad. And it is only getting worse as we add more and more greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. Okay, more and more blankets on the earth, so more heat gets trapped. And of course, here in Japan, on July 14th in 2018, we had a heat wave here. We had several heat waves, and over 1,000 people died, and there was 71,000 people from Japan that were taken to hospitals during that time. So we see it even in places like Japan, where we are very, very well off, and most of us have air conditioners. Even here, it becomes a major problem. So really quickly, everyone take a look at these lines here. In the chat window, I want you to guess, what do you think these lines mean? If you're not sure, that's okay. But if you want, please take a guess. Any answer is okay. I'll give everybody about 1 minute right now in the chat window. Please write your answers. What do you think this picture is? Okay, another 10 seconds. Any guesses? Okay, if you're not sure, that's okay. Let me explain what this is. This here is the temperature change in Japan from 1901. So each of those stripes that you see is 1 year. Blue means it is below average. Red means that it is above average. And you can see during the 1910s, it was much lower. And now, 2020 to 2021, where we are, you can see these red, red, red stripes. So even in Japan, the average temperature is going up and up and up, which is a huge problem and is going to be a problem for you guys, especially because you are starting your lives. You're about to get jobs in Japan, and hopefully soon you'll have children and grandchildren. And we want our children and our grandchildren, the future generations, to be healthy and live in a comfortable place. So let's start here talking about the first thing that you can do as students about climate change. So I'm going to talk about some individual things that you can do. So for example, what you eat is important. What you do, like things like recycle, is important. And also how much energy you use is very important. So I want you guys to remember this. What actions you take now make a difference. But I'm going to add in a little asterisk here. It's probably less than you think. So let me explain what I mean by this. Okay, this guy right here, let's imagine that his name is Toru. And he lives here in Japan. He's a student like you guys. Now, Toru, his parents gave him a car and he rides to school, to Konan University every single day, back to his house to Konan University. Toru, let's say that he eats a lot of meat. He really likes yakiniku. He eats a ton of it. He has a high electricity bill because he's constantly playing video games and watching TV. And he doesn't really care about the environment very much. His carbon dioxide footprint, we call, how much carbon he produces every year, is about 8.3 tons. So when we talk about 1 ton of carbon dioxide or greenhouse gas, you can imagine how much 1 ton weighs. Okay, he produces a lot, 8.3. That's about 3 elephants worth. And this is Megumi. So Megumi, she rides her bike to school every single day. She eats a little bit of meat from time to time, but she mostly eats vegetables, salads, rice. Her electricity is fairly low. She seems to like reading. Oops. And of course, she cares about the environment. So she's made some choices about what she wants to do. Her carbon footprint is still pretty big. So hers is about 7.9 tons a year. Okay, less than Toru's, but still pretty big. So if we look at the two of them combined, we can see that obviously Megumi's lifestyle is better than Toru's, but it's not a huge difference. So if we look at Japan, because Japan is a richer country in the world, right? 126 million people live in Japan. Naturally, Japan has a very large carbon footprint, right? All of those people need electricity. All of those people live in modern houses and use modern electricity grids. So it is quite big if we live in a developed country like Japan or America or places in Europe. If we compare that to a country like the Philippines, which also has a very big population, okay, they have 108 million. Compared to Japan, people there use a lot less tons of energy. And this is partly because there are not as developed countries. Not everyone has a TV and a car and a house, things that use a lot of energy. So in Japan, we are limited to what we can do. This graph here, it shows where most of our emissions, our greenhouse gases, come from in Japan. And if you look, most of it comes from electricity and heat. And in Japan, we use a lot of oil and coal and gas for electricity and heat, which produce a lot of carbon dioxide. Transportation is the other one. So this is what runs our trains, our cars, our buses in Japan. And then buildings is another one. Manufacturing, so buildings, right? Making buildings, and then the buildings that we live in. If you live in an apartment building, when we pour concrete or use metal, there is lots of carbon in those things as well. So in Japan, we live in these modern cities, so it's going to be much bigger than a country like the Philippines. So let's go back and talk about Toru and Megumi a little bit. The things that you can do to decrease your carbon footprint are things like eating less meat, especially beef. Beef has one of the biggest carbon footprints. Pork is much smaller. Chicken is even smaller. For part of the reason is because cows take up a lot of space. They eat a lot of food, and then they also burp a lot, which produces a lot of greenhouse gases. So if you can decrease your meat, especially beef, that is helpful. Using less electricity is very, very good. So making sure you turn off the lights or getting yourselves good lights that work well. Walking, taking your bike, or using public transportation is very, very good. When we share transportation, it helps to decrease. And of course, reducing what we consume, what we use, what we buy, okay, making that smaller, reusing things as much as possible, and then recycling as much as possible. So 8.3 tons a year for Toru and 7.9 for Megumi. This is good, but it's not a big, big difference. So what is the second important thing that you can do about climate change? And what can you do to save money? Save your yen. This is very important. So let me explain. You guys are very, very special because in the next 5 to 10 years, you are going to be leaving university. You are going to be getting jobs, buying houses and appliances like microwaves and washing machines and TVs. You guys are also going to be deciding on transportation costs in the future. So how you spend your money in the next 5 to 10 years is so, so, so important. Okay, let me explain. So how you spend your money in the future is very important, and it is more important than what you do now. Okay, so think about Megumi. She's doing really great stuff now, but she will have a bigger impact on climate change if she decides to get a better house, drive a better car, choose energy efficient appliances. So I'm going to explain a little bit more. Remember this graph from before. Electricity and heat, especially for our houses, is the biggest impact on greenhouse gases in Japan. And then transport comes in second. So these two we want to focus on. So today I'm going to focus on those two, housing and transportation. So let's do a little bit of comparison again. Let's bring back Toru, let's bring back Megumi, and let's learn from those guys. So Toru, he's kind of our bad guy, climate change guy. In the future, he wants to buy a big house. The bigger, the better. 3 LDK, 4 LDK. Okay, a big house. He likes his space. He's going to buy the biggest house he can, but he's going to spend the littlest money on his house. So his windows are going to be inefficient, not very good. The insulation that keeps the warm in and keeps the cold in is going to be very cheap and not very good quality. So it's going to have very little insulation in the house so that he can keep the heat in the winter and keep the cold in the summer. And he's going to buy the cheapest fridge he can, and the cheapest microwave, and the cheapest washing machine, which are going to have high electricity costs and draw a lot more electricity than energy efficient washing machines and microwaves and appliances. Then let's take a look at Megumi. So she is a little bit more conscious, knows more about the environment. So she wants a nice 2 LDK apartment for her and her family. So she is going to not live in an individual house, but in an apartment building where we can share energy costs. She's going to try to find an apartment that has very good windows. So when you have a single pane window, which means one piece of glass, it's very energy inefficient. The heat and the cold go right through. But if you have a double pane where you have 2 pieces of glass, it is much better. And your energy goes down and your bills go down. She wants to build some solar panels on the roof of the building to get some of her energy. And she's going to try to use a more energy efficient heating system, not just an air conditioner. So there's lots of cool technologies that are being developed by Sony and Toyota and Panasonic that do these kinds of things much better, efficiently and cheaper. So let's think about this for a second. Over 20 years, how much carbon or how much greenhouse gases will Toru produce in his big house? And how much greenhouse gases will Megumi produce? Toru produces about 9.3 tons a year. And over 20 years, it's 186 tons of greenhouse gases. Megumi, on the other hand, She produces about 7.6 tons a year because she has a smaller house, more energy efficient, better fridges and televisions and appliances. So hers is about 152. Over 20 years, Megumi saves 19% in energy and heating costs. That's a lot. Over 20 years, that is a lot of money that you get to put in your pocket instead of giving it to the electrical company. So you guys in the next 5 to 10 years will be looking for a house or an apartment. Please choose something that is energy efficient because it's going to be better for the environment and global warming, and it's going to save you cash. Let's talk about transportation now. Toru, he lives very, very far from his work. So it means he has to drive every day back and forth between work and home. He uses gas or diesel fueled car. There are some really cool new cars coming in the future, hybrid cars and hydrogen powered cars. But Toru wants that big, loud vehicle that makes a lot of noise, goes really fast. He has to pay for parking. So he has to pay for parking at his home, and then he has to pay for parking at work. He has to pay for maintenance on his car, which is expensive every year, and he has to pay car insurance on his car. Now, Megumi, she doesn't want to own a car. She rents a car or does a car share. So if she has to go, let's say she wants to go to Costco and buy lots of shopping, she can rent a car for 4 hours, go and come back, which is great. She uses public transportation to work. So her apartment is very close to a train station like Santa Mia Station. So it's very easy for her to take the trains to and from. She saves money on parking. She doesn't have to pay for parking. So in terms of costs, how much is it going to be for Toru over 20 years compared to Megumi over 20 years? So for Toru, each month, this includes gas, insurance, maintenance, and the loan he has on his car. He's going to be paying about 32,500 yen a month for his car. And over 20 years, that is 7,800,000 yen. It's a lot of money. Megumi, on the other hand, she's going to be paying about 6,500 a month. And over 20 years, that price is 1,560,000. So over 20 years, Megumi saves 80% of her cash for transportation. She also produces a lot less greenhouse gases. And she has over 6 million more in cash that she can spend on something she wants. So over time, if you have a car, it costs a lot of money for you and the environment. But if you're willing to take public transportation, use car sharing, you can save a lot of money and it's better for the environment. So you guys, over the next 5 or 10 years, please think about the kind of house that you want to live in. Do you want to live in a big house? Do you want to live in an apartment? Do you want to live close to the train station? or very, very far away where you need to have a car or transportation to work every day. So think carefully about those because there is environmental and cost benefits. Cars are very important. If you really want a car, think about the future technologies like hybrid cars or the new hydrogen powered cars, which will be coming out in the next 5 years. They are much, much better for the environment and will save you money as well. But the best way to do it is to have no car at all. So money is a very important part of that. You can do two things: save the environment and save cash. Okay, what is the very, very last and most important thing that you can do about climate change? By the way, just to let you guys know, if you have any questions at all, please put your questions in the chat window and I will try to answer them at the end, okay? Excellent. So the most important thing you can do. The most important thing you can do is to have conversations about this. Talk to your friends. Talk to your mom and dad. Talk to your grandma and grandpa. Ask them what they think about climate change. And learn as much as you can about it. Climate change is something that your generation, you guys will have to deal with for the next 15, 20, 30, 40 years. And it is a huge problem that is going to affect everything from the size and power of typhoons to heat waves to huge, huge, huge rain pours. So this is something that you want to talk to people about. The more people that understand the situation, the better. And if you live with your families, you can talk about different types of solutions or things that you can do as a family to help. Another great way to think about this is what we call a Venn diagram. So a Venn diagram is where we have 3 circles and we put those circles together. Here, if you think about what you're good at, what brings you joy, right? Something that you enjoy, and what work needs to be done. So what has to be done in the world. In the middle, that is where you make a difference. So you guys as students, maybe you are really good at creating websites. Maybe you're very, very concerned about air pollution. And you enjoy telling people about this or explaining it. So in the middle there, you can make a website to show people or explain to people about air pollution. For example, if I was going to break this down for myself, I'm very good at learning, presenting, and educating. I really strongly believe that environmental education, we need to teach more people about the environment. And CC means climate change. So making sure that people understand what is climate change, how does it affect you? And then creating and sharing and nature are things that bring me joy. So for me, if we put the Venn diagram together, presenting to you is part of what I'm good at, what brings me joy, and climate change is something that is very, very, very important. Please think about this for yourself. Okay, what does this look like for you? What are you good at? what brings you joy, and what needs to get done. And if you find that in the middle, that is what you can do to make a difference. Does anybody know this guy? This is David Suzuki. David Suzuki is a Japanese Canadian scientist. And he is very, very famous in Canada. He is one of my heroes. David Suzuki started off as a geneticist, and then he started educating people about the environment and about climate change. I really, really admire him a lot. And he said something that is very, very important. He says, when we forget that we are part of the natural world. So humans, we need clean air, we need clean water, and we need good food to live. So we are part of the natural world. We also forget that what we do to our surroundings, we do to ourselves. So this idea is that the more carbon that you produce or greenhouse gases that you produce, you are actually going to be hurting yourself in the future and hurting your children and your grandchildren. So we have to remember that we are part of this. If we want clean air, we have to work towards clean air. If we want clean water, we have to make sure the water is clean and we are doing enough to help. So David Suzuki is definitely one of my inspirations. And just to recall what we've talked about so far, do what you can on an individual level. Eating less meat, for example, especially beef, is a very good thing that you can do. Making sure that you are trying to use public transportation is something you can do. You guys in the next 5-10 years are going to be shopping around for cars and houses and fridges and new computers. You can make good decisions that are better for you and better for your wallet. You can save a lot of money. This is a big, big impact. And of course, the last one, talk to other people about climate change. Think about what you are passionate about and excited about and want to know more about. And you can make a difference with your family or your neighborhood or your country or all over the world if you're interested. So the most important thing, start having conversations, ask questions. That is very, very important. The last part is this picture of the Earth. Again, just to remind you guys, if we look at that atmosphere, it is so, so, so thin. You can't even see it on this picture. And the more greenhouse gases we put inside, the thicker that gets, and the more heat is trapped. So we really need to do something to help ourselves and help people in other countries, especially developing countries or poorer countries. So you guys can do a lot of good work in the next 5 or 10 years. So on the handout in the chat window, I put some great resources. If you're interested to get started, I just put 4. There is a really cool podcast called How to Save a Planet. You can find the English transcript or you can listen to it on the bus or train. It is a really great podcast. Climate Action Tracker. You can learn about the impact of Japan on climate change. You can learn about other countries. Carbon Footprint. I calculated Toru's carbon footprint and Megumi's carbon footprint. How many tons of CO2 per year? You can use this and calculate your own footprint, how much carbon you make each year. That website is very, very useful. And the last one, there are many great documentaries. Chasing Coral is an excellent documentary about climate change and the ocean. So one of the places where all of that heat from the sun gets absorbed is in the ocean. And the oceans are having major problems. Chasing Coral is available on Netflix, and it is really great. You can turn on Japanese subtitles to watch it if you're interested. It's a beautiful documentary, and you will learn a lot more about climate change as well. Okay, everybody. Thank you guys very, very, very much for participating. So I'm going to give you guys the opportunity to ask some questions if you want. You can unmute and ask your question, or you can type your question in the chat. And I will do my best to answer those questions. And if I don't know the answer, I will definitely try to find the answer. So please add your questions to the chat, or if you're interested, please unmute and you can ask your question.
Mr. J, can I ask some?
Hi, Sho. Yes, please go ahead.
You said to buy like solar panel to contribute environment, but solar panel is so expensive, and even if can contribute to healthy environment, we have to pay a lot of money, and it takes so much time to restore the money to buy solar panel. So it is not, I think it is not efficient. So the government or like some associations have to pay a lot of grants to contribute to environment healthy. So what do you think about that?
Okay, excellent question, Sho. That is a really, really good question. Solar panels are very expensive right now. That is very true. But the good news is that if you look over the last 15 years, the price of solar panels is going down and down and down and down, and they're getting more efficient. So they are getting better technology. Now, you are right that they are very expensive to start. People have done the calculation, and in the next 5 or 10 years, when you are maybe starting to shop for a house or buy an apartment, the price is going to be much better than it is today. And hopefully, the government is going to help support people like you, right, that want to buy solar panels, because Japan needs to decrease its carbon footprint. So the government needs to jump on with different policies to help do that. So you're right. Right now, they are very, very expensive. But the good news is, especially in the next 5 or 10 years, the price is going to be much better. And the government hopefully will have better policies to help you in your future. So hopefully that will work out better. If you can't get solar panels, there are many other things you can do. For example, investing in double pane windows, right? Not just one piece of glass, but two. It will save you hundreds of, lots of yen, thousands of yen in the future. And it's very, very inexpensive to do. So that's maybe a better place to do it. But anyways, thank you, Sho. That's an excellent question.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any other questions?
I have, and before I ask a question, I want to say something about show. You said you're looking for. I mean, you want to have solar panels, but those are expensive. But I have heard that there are some energy company. I mean, the companies that provides you energy, which is um, which is good for the environment. So you can change the company that provides you the energy and the energies are kind of to the environment. So you have some choices like solar panels, and if you cannot afford the solar panel, you can change the company to the um, eco company. Oh, sorry, my internet is not.
Sakura, that is a really great point. And I just wanted to show you guys actually, one of the places that I've switched my electricity to is a company called Shizoden. And it is a Japanese company where you can pay your electricity to help support um, sustainable and green power. And right now, any household in Japan can switch. So this could be something you might want to talk to your family about. You can choose to support renewable energies in Japan, for example. So this website is a really excellent website. I'll stick the link in the chat window. So thank you, Sakura. That's a great point. Okay, I'll just.
And sorry.
Oh, please go ahead.
Thank you. You said like starting a conversation is important, but I wonder like how if you do that, how do you often start conversation in like natural conversation or like with your friends or family or that's the question.
So, I mean, for me personally, I come from a place in Canada where there's the oil sands in Canada. So it is a place where many of my friends work for oil companies or gas companies in Canada. So this conversation is very difficult with my friends and family. Usually, I want to understand their opinions and ideas about climate change. So I usually start by asking what they think. I never want to try to change their opinion, but once you start talking and giving each other's opinion, that is the first step. And oftentimes you can plant a seed or an idea in somebody's head, and maybe 3 weeks later, they will change their ideas a little bit. So those conversations are difficult, but it can be as simple as saying, if you like hiking, talk about hiking and the beauty of nature. And oftentimes that will lead to interesting conversations about how do you protect those forests? How do you protect that nature? And that's an easy way to do it as well. All right, guys, is there any other questions? We've still got a little bit of time, another 5 minutes or so. If you guys have any questions, feel free to unmute and ask. I will be happy to do my best. Don't be shy. Okay, if there are no other questions, that's okay. I'm going to stick a couple of things in the chat for you guys to take a look at. So the first one is a poster about the other Ozone Global Lecture Series talks. There are many interesting ones that are going to be happening. So please check them out and join us. Bring your questions. They should be very, very interesting. And today I created a handout. If you haven't got that handout, please check in the chat window and download it to your computer. It's quite big. Sorry, I didn't realize that it would be that big. And let me just leave you guys with a quick thought. We're going to wrap up here. Thank you guys very, very much for coming. Like I said, your actions now make a difference. In the next 5 or 10 years, where you work, where you decide to live, what kind of a house you live in, these things are very important. And of course, if you are interested and about climate change, please try to learn more. If you see me, ask me questions or do research on your own. And if you have something that you find that's interesting, send me an email. I will be very happy to talk to you about it, or we can meet in the ozone when we go back to face. Okay? Sound good? All right, everybody. I want to give everybody give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you guys very, very much for coming along. And we will see you guys very, very soon. Please stay safe. All right. Bye, everybody. Have a wonderful week. See you guys later.